What's up, everybody? Assad here, and welcome to Patio Table Talk, episode 47. And I'm with my good friend, teammate, John Conway.
What's going on, Cadillac? How you doing today, man?
Oh, man, Cadillac, here we go. We're starting off here. Cheers.
We already here. Let's get it.
Oh, man. So, let's get into it. Well, when did we meet?
It was post-pandemic, I believe.
No.
We did meet pre-pandemic. That's right. Yes.
We've
See,
been
my
friends for a long
timetables are all
time.
fucked up now. I don't know what's anything anymore.
That's true.
Everything's
I
been
mean,
so
like, what is
construed.
time? Like, when COVID hit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, shit.
We're getting that
I
deep.
can't
What
get
is
these kind of
time,
questions.
really?
No, I don't have these answers. Come on.
It's just
now.
a social construct that us humans... You know
Look,
what I'm saying?
man, the clock tells me to be places. Don't tell me what the fuck time is, okay? Shit. Okay? I have a structure here, okay? It works.
So one thing I'll say about you, and this is weird, I feel like everything I like and dislike, you like and dislike.
We're kind of a vibe. We kind of vibe.
Like I don't think we've ever disagreed on anything.
No, honestly, we've always been kind of like...
And whenever we talk, it's like goes like, it's literally a podcast every time we talk.
I know, right? I'm not monetizing this enough. Guys, we need to monetize this. Or
Yes.
am I? Okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like I feel like we've talked about so many different things, and I was like, I really gotta have this guy on. You know what I'm saying?
Fair.
So so let's just talk about how we met. So we obviously trained together. We're teammates at
Yes.
Subfighter MMA under Tracy S. You're related to Tracy.
Yes, Tracy's my cousin.
First, second, third,
Second
fourth,
cousin.
removed by family, blood, marriage.
Second cousin. Our grandmas are sisters, I believe is how the lineage goes back.
Okay.
It was totally like interesting timing how I came into being at the gym. I think I maybe met Tracy once or twice. We both didn't really remember each other that much. You know what I mean? Like he knows my dad pretty well. He always liked my dad.
Okay.
My parents showed to a family reunion. He's there. They talk about how I just started trying jiu-jitsu. I was working with Noah Tillis at Tillis BJJ.
Okay.
Great guy. He actually trains under Tracy when he does fight camps.
Oh, cool.
So Noah, shout out Noah. He's a great fucking teacher. He got me started on this journey. Had some things fuck up, kind of dropped out. You know what I mean? Because I make poor life choices. And then
we'll get into those.
We'll get into those. And then, Tracy threw an offer to my parents to like, hey, if he's doing jiu-jitsu, send him through. And I was like, okay. So I started Googling his gym and
Found out he's an absolute legend.
I didn't get it yet because like I had never watched a UFC fight. I had never had any interest in any of this. I actually thought it was barbaric. Still, I was one of those kind of people who thought like, oh wow, this is like they're killing each other in a cage. That's not, you know, like I really like I wasn't like vocally against it or anything, but like I just was like, oh, well, I'm not really interested in this.
Did you play sports or anything growing up or anything like that?
Nothing.
Nothing?
I was not a sports guy. You could ask me what the rules of football are, and I'd be like, yes. Yes.
Nice.
Pretty much any sport. Yeah.
Wow.
This is the first sport I've ever been into in my entire life.
Wow.
I was non-athlete. Yeah, and so this change happened at 30.
Let's talk about your upbringing then. So what did you do growing up? Like, what did you do for fun?
So I mean, like most kids, you know, our age, we play video games. I played video games mostly, you know, until I was like 13, 14 years old. Then I started getting into music and dance. That was like the two things.
Dance?
Yeah.
You do dance?
I mean, like not so much now, but like when I was like 15, 16, my
Like
thing was
breakdancing?
yes.
No
How'd you
way.
call that shit? I never even told you this before.
No, I just knew it. Like, it's like assumed.
What the
I'm
fuck?
assuming it wasn't like ballet.
This is true.
And I'm assuming it wasn't like salsa.
They'll-
So I'm like,
they'll-
breakdancing.
Salsa will
You
be
know,
dope,
apparently
though.
breakdancers make really good. Breakdancers are really good. Apparently, I don't know where I heard this, but apparently they're good at jujitsu.
So
Because they can move their body in weird fucking ways.
I know what that comes from is because two of the top 10 planet guys are both former breakdancers.
That's something I've heard
Yeah.
or something. Okay, cool.
Yeah, which I think that I actually have said this before because when we were doing wrestling class under Ryan one day, Medina, we were doing this drill where like it's like you kind of put your arm back, you step under. I remember thinking the whole time I was like, this feels like a b-boy move when like you're like doing like your kind of swipes back and forth. And I was like, and then I had this whole like thing like I'm convinced that the first b-boys in the 70s were actually people who wrestled probably in high school, and they just had some of these like mechanics built into them. I have nothing to back that. I'm totally bullshitting. Do not take me as saying anything fact. But Yes, that's kind of what my theory is on that now.
Okay.
Just experiencing both. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard something about that. Okay, so you're breakdancing, you're dancing, and are you local? You're not from here, right? You're from the OC?
Well, I grew up in Long Beach.
Okay, got it.
So I grew up actually pretty close to where we are now at Team Body Shop. Just a couple blocks away next to Ramona Park in Long Beach.
Okay.
So that's where I grew. I lived till about in my 20s. I live in Anaheim now. I had a little bit of time. I lived in Vegas. But mostly, just this general OC Long Beach area.
Nice.
Stuff.
So when did you head out to Vegas?
That was 2013.
2013.
Yeah, I caught a job that took me some interesting places.
Let's talk about that.
And yeah, absolutely.
John was a porn star.
Jesus Christ! Every time. No, I was not a porn star. I did work in porn. I did edit dicks for a living, basically.
Kevin, did you know this?
If you wanna be straight about it, about what I did every day, I edited dicks in Photoshop every day for a living. So that was like 2 years of my life. It was a time. Anyways,
let's talk. Like, okay. How does who gives you this job? How do you know them? Where did you meet them? Like,
so in 2012 there was a thing called Prop B that was on the ballot. That was the condom law. Basically, OSHA was coming into the porn industry and saying,
we got to wear condom.
You have to wear a condom. And then there was some other
they got to wear condoms.
Yeah, someone has to wear a condom at some point. And then there was some other shit too about, I remember like goggles being involved and stuff. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely.
Goggles?
Yeah, like literally there
porn
was.
Porn stars had to wear goggles?
Because it was OSHA. It was OSHA requirements that were coming because it's California.
What's OSHA?
God. They're like the organization that it's like about the safety of like different industries and whatnot. I couldn't break down exactly. OSHA requirements are basically the standards by which a lot of businesses operate by for safety standards. A lot of these things were coming into porn, and in 2012 the condom law passed. So the company I worked for is Porn Pros was the main company. They were moving to Vegas. All the companies in LA moved to Vegas in 2013, just because the condom law passed, and it was like, well, this is forget it. There was literally a Craigslist posting for a job editing porn. I'd done multimedia design in school and stuff, so I kind of had a background in it. I was doing some web work and stuff at the time. And they had a job posting for it. I got the job. I moved out to Vegas 2013, and it was
describe a porn set. What was a porn set
so,
like?
I've been on the porn set a couple times.
And have you like the porn stars that you've met porn stars?
Yeah, I've met a few porn stars.
Are they cool?
Most of them that I met were pretty cool.
You met any like stuck up asshole porn stars?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, there was one. I remember it was oh my god, it was some crazy night we had on so there was also when I was exiting the porn industry was told to leave the porn industry. But I was doing a porn podcast.
He got kicked out.
Yeah, if you lied off at your boss one day,
his dick was way too big.
You tend to get thrown out.
When you what?
If you lied off at your boss one day, you tend to get thrown out. You know what I mean? I made a challenge, and it was like, okay, you can leave. I got a life lesson out of that. I had issues with the way I handled my anger. So everything, life lessons, and that was one of the ones I took in.
Okay.
And I had to learn how a professional world, you have to, even though it's porn, it's still a professional world. It was a regular office job, the way you would imagine most. I log into my computer. Instead of logging into like just boring spreadsheets, I'm logging into like
this
Pornhub, or I'm looking to RedTube. I'm like looking at the content we uploaded and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, it's not, but it's not like it's some. I thought it was gonna be some like crazy like cocaine fueled like orgy fest or some shit I was gonna walk into, and it ended up just.
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Being an office job where I look at titties all day, or if it was a good day to be looking at titties. We also did a gay porn, so I've looked at a shitload of gay porn as well. That was longer days for sure. For sure, 100%.
Kevin's so interested.
His
eyes are wide open. He's like, what?
There's something wrong with the industry when straight men are editing gay porn. It just, I always said, like, I did my best because I learned eventually. The interesting thing was I learned was that the dichotomy between being gay and straight in terms of what the consumer wants is exactly the same. The male audience wants the same thing in terms of their porn from a straight side to a gay side.
Explain. What do you mean?
So like we would make a site, and we would make a site basically the exact same carbon copy for the gay side, because men who are the primary consumers of porn, the ones who are going to pay a monthly subscription. I mean, we all consume porn, but men,
not Kevin,
typically middle aged. I mean, also yes.
Kevin is a heavenly, godly man.
You know what? I appreciate you. Honestly, I should be more like that.
He's an alpha. He doesn't watch it.
Doesn't even fuck with it.
Right,
That's
Kevin?
Fair. That's fair.
Fuck yeah, baby.
Fuck yeah, Kevin. You
Yeah,
got this.
he's a savage. He's an inspiration.
You make me be better. I appreciate you.
Yes, he does. Love you, Kevin.
We love you, Kevin.
We love you, Kevin.
Oh man.
Okay, so
Yeah.
say that one more time. So the consumer. So are you saying the goal of the consumer is the same?
In terms of what they liked, so like the type of roles that in straight porn was obviously like the male, some sort of dominant role typically, the woman kind of like being seduced and giving into him, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same dichotomy in gay porn too.
Yeah, that's a good question.
You know?
Like, do you have to like there's this whole like notion that like, oh, porn acting is so awful. You know what I'm saying?
And it is sometimes. It really is sometimes.
But like, just so does the woman act in a way that like a porn consumer would want?
That
word that
in terms
correctly?
of her performance?
No. In terms of like the lead up to it, you know what I'm saying?
You
know how they say like
upset.
Yeah, like for example, you know how they say like females, they really they're really into like romance novels and stuff like that. So they're really about like the build up.
Right.
So
right.
like, is that something that like porn producers try to do? Because
so I think it's
I'm assuming not, because it's usually just like take your goddamn clothes off.
It's not even that too. You really have to appease them. Mind you, at the end of the day, like you have to make the girls comfortable. That was always the main goal, is to get comfortable so they can perform and do what they need to do.
I was listening to a podcast with Andrew Schultz and Lisa Ann.
Yeah.
And she was saying how back in the day, like, and me and you have talked about this. Like back in the day, the girl, like when technology wasn't that advanced, right? Like to keep like the dude hard, like they would like film like a quick shot, and then they would go into another room, and she would have to like keep him like aroused.
That's like the fluffer idea. I mean, possibly in the early days of porn, it was because I was told that I came into an era of porn after it got cleaned up, because the company I worked for in the 2000s were doing much more hardcore stuff, and then I came in 2013, and they were much more doing like, our main site was called Passion HD, which is all about the backlit shot. You know what I mean? The great lighting on it and everything. You want the people.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's a specific demographic who pays money for porn. That was. We don't care who the main, like everyone is. It's who's going to pay money. You know, pay money for high quality content.
Got it.
Yeah. So that was the idea. Which, mind you, the monthly subscriptions they would definitely make is fantastic. Great industry to be in. I think it was something I read about. If it's under $100 a month, a lot of people don't even tend to think about it. It's on the credit card as a residual payment.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, so you think about like a typical porn subscription. I think ours was like $30 a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So like a guy who.
So you guys are bringing in money then.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So you have people who signed up maybe in the 2000s who haven't even thought about it, and so long because it's $30 a month on a credit card they don't even think about.
That's insane though.
It really, that's really what it seemed like it was.
Like, I feel like, obviously right now there's this whole OnlyFans thing going around.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like.
Changed everything too.
I judge the people who pay for OnlyFans more than the people who do OnlyFans.
And I do too, but in the sense that I feel that there are some that are consuming porn, but I think there are a lot of guys who are attempting to buy their way into a relationship, and I think that's when you kind of look at it like.
Does that happen? Has that
I
ever happened?
I don't think that ever actually happens, but I think there is a lot of guys out there who are so lonely and who don't have anyone to talk to that this girl will message you back and forth all day and then send you some lewds every so while or some naked pics, and like you feel like you have a girlfriend. You know what I mean? It feels like it.
Jeez.
You know, I'm just saying, like, I don't think it's
As
healthy, but
as a person who's been in the industry, in your eyes, how damaging do you believe porn is to society? Or let's just talk about men.
men.
How damaging do you think? Do you think porn is damaging?
Some sense, yes. I think one regard is some men. It gives a false interpretation of what sex and intimacy even is. So on one level, because it's like it's not real. Like I'm there when the cuts are happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it looks, especially the porn that we made. It was, you know, it's flowery, it's perfect, has a perfect lighting, has a perfect angle, you know what I mean? Like even that was something that was always interesting to me. It was like even the angles that you would have sex in was specifically for the shot. Pleasure was not a factor in that. It was not about fucking to enjoyment. It was about, like, you need to open up your leg because we need to get the shot of you going in. Like, that's, like, literally the idea behind it. And then, you know, it's, I think it's always interesting, too, because, so the big thing, right, is facials. So people always like facials. That's, like, a big thing in porn as well, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that, I think that that's only really popular because of porn. Because it's, like, it's an aesthetic thing, right? It's a I guess a male show of dominance at the end of the day. That's kind of what gets you off on it. The goal is to come inside them. So, you know, if you think about really the facial thing to me is kind of like a fetish that built off of the aesthetic that you kind of get from watching sex rather than engaging in it as much. Not saying that you can't enjoy that too, you know, just I think that the reason why that's such a like a big, I guess, I don't know, fetish or turn on for a lot of guys would be just because they've been displayed so often, you know, watching porn, jerking off.
TMI. My dad told me that once. Like, my dad was like, hey, listen.
Oh, I want this story.
My dad was like, he was like, look. Because it actually wasn't even porn. It was I had an iPod Touch.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And I had there's this WWE star that I had a huge crush on. Her name was Stacy Keibler.
Yes, I know exactly who she is.
And she was my wallpaper, right? And my dad saw, and he was like, hey, come here. He was like, look, porn, like this whole, like whatever you see, whatever sold to you, like, and I'm actually very grateful that he told me this. He goes, it's not real.
Yeah.
Like that is not real.
Yeah.
Like it's a movie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's an extremely exaggerated version of what actually happens.
Right. Absolutely.
So he goes, the reason it's unhealthy is that people have that expectation, right?
Right.
And it could lead to like toxic kind of like, expectation of like what you think it is.
Absolutely.
Like
no,
it's
absolutely.
like, and as a kid, I'm like, Dad, give my fucking iPod Touch back to stop. It's just super uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? But now as a grown, like a more grown adult, I'm like, I'm really appreciative of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think there is.
So, okay. Like, I also heard that like, porn is kind of like, there's pros and cons to it, right? So I've heard the pros to it, that it can release like a sexual frustration that men have, like, and like that like really lonely, like really lonely, like fucked up people that don't have that like it releases this kind of tension that they have that
gives you the illusion
in
of sex,
a safe way,
like satiate you a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, there is. I think there was.
I did not think we'd be talking this long about porn. Kevin's like, me neither.
There was a statistic I remember reading about, like, I think it was like states that have more access to high speed internet, thus more access to porn. I think like it was like rape numbers were down in those states.
Wow.
So I don't recall exactly what it was. I'd want to like reference it before I start spouting it off as something true. But I remember reading something about that not too long ago. I'd want to find that first and reference it, because I mean that could mean exactly what you're saying. It could maybe make some people who would be a problem and like.
Well, I heard there was this. They were talking about. I'm not sure where I read it or listened to it. It was about, like, you know how they have these sex dolls.
Yeah.
And how they're saying like some of these sex dolls look like really, like pretty real apparently.
Yeah.
And they're saying like those could help in some weird fucking way.
I guess so.
Men are just fucking gross.
I mean, we fuck with our eyes first. You know what I mean? Like it's what we see. But man, it's just weird because it's like I feel like sex is becoming more detached from like sex, like between two people. Like actually, it's like with the internet, technology, all this new, it's like sex has become distance from actual human interaction and intimacy.
Dating apps and stuff.
Yeah, that too. It makes everything very casual.
Mm-hmm.
It's.
Me and you have talked about this. We talk about the disconnect that men and women have at the moment.
Yeah.
And what's fucked up and what's not. And let's get into that a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Me and you have the same agreement on how. I guess we just have this strong, disagreement with how, not me and you together, we have a disagreement with how men go about things in the dating realm.
Yeah.
And like the sex realm or whatever it is.
Right.
And I just wanted to say we talk about how men throw away a lot of their values, a lot of what they their goals, their aspirations, just for the sake of pursuing women.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I was like a lot of women now are kind of like doing what men, like a lot of men should be doing. It's kind of like they're out there hustling, they're out there grinding, they're doing what they got to do.
Yeah.
Like that. But like men, I feel like they're kind of like throwing a lot away, throwing everything away just for like short-term gratification and pleasure.
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, it's kind of like that's not all the life, bro.
No, absolutely not. And I would say that trends back deeper to almost like the things that we've kind of gotten addicted to in this new age of the internet and how we interact and everything. Because in a sense, women have gotten addicted to social media validation, I would say is the main thing that they've probably gotten really addicted to. And men have got addicted to escapism, which whether it be porn, video games, something that takes them away from here, right? So women really strive to do things now, which of course they have the freedom to do so that they didn't have a long time ago. But it's still like the problem I think is that the thing that women want from men have checked out, so they're not stepping up to become better.
And vice versa, right?
And women have become so independent that men kind of look and go, well, she doesn't even need me. Which is like this, now we have this dichotomy of, at its extreme, obviously, is the girl who's now selling an OnlyFans account to the guy who never talks to a woman ever. Like now we have the woman who's fully monetized her personal life, in a sense, to the guy who now has only personal interaction through monetization. Wow. And I think that's, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I do think it can go to bad places. I don't know if it's necessarily there yet, but it's a worrisome dichotomy because I don't think it makes either party necessarily happy for the long run because I don't think we focus enough on that.
What do you feel like ideally would make both parties happy? It depends, right? It's obviously relative.
No, obviously, it's relative to every person. At this point, I don't know because
it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I just feel like if there's one thing that I've seen is like, that's obviously true what's going on. I see it in a lot of men. I'll speak for men.
Right.
I don't want to speak for women. Obviously, I'm not a woman.
Yeah.
But like I'll just speak for guys that are my age.
Right.
Or in our realm. And I feel like what I see is a lot of escapism. You know?
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's leading to this internal subconscious like bitterness in men.
Absolutely.
And I feel like what that is doing is like they're not kind of living to what I'm not saying how a man should live.
His full potential.
But like his full potential is not just escapism. It's like you going out and seeking discomfort and trying to go do good things for yourself and go out and accomplishment and goals. You know what I'm saying? Driven and keep going.
Absolutely.
And it's funny. I see more women doing that.
Yes, women are driven to that right now.
Women are grinding, and it's kind of like
you gotta appreciate.
Where are all the dudes here?
Yeah.
Like I see like a girl's Instagram like, man, I work 3 jobs. I have a social life. I got my money right.
Right.
I'm at the gym every day. I'm taking care of myself, and it's kind of like I don't see a lot of dudes doing that.
Absolutely not. Most guys are kind of checked out at this point.
It throws me off. It really does. And we could talk about like the societal like expectations and like how a lot of men nowadays feel like they're devalued or they're not valued enough.
Yeah. No.
But it's kind of like, do you feel like that's true? Do you feel like society has kind of devalued men in a lot of ways? There's talk about like patriarchy and toxic masculinity and let women have their shot. And it's like, okay, obviously like, women should have a fair share and like, the way how things are going, stuff like that. But it's kind of like, and there's, concepts of like toxic masculinity that I'm not aware of. I haven't looked into it, but like in general, like I feel like a lot of men, like, do you feel like there's a fear in men that are kind of like, oh shit, like, if I'm going to be aggressive and the things that, because men are just naturally more aggressive. So it's kind of like, I'm going to go do what the fuck I got to do. And I'm going to go hit these goals and accomplishments, stuff like that. And it's kind of like, do you feel like they're fearful because of the judgment that they will receive, or?
Yes, I think that is a factor. I say that definitely as a man that was that before I found the fight game.
Yeah.
This was a change I had at 30. If you had met me 10 years ago, I was definitely a weaker man. I blame society for all the shortcomings that in my own life. You know what I mean? Like I was definitely one of those. I had a bad mindset to life. I didn't take personal responsibility for anything. I don't think that is pushed so heavily to us too. I don't think that a lot of guys really get out of their comfort zone anymore. I think that also isn't. I don't think getting out of your comfort zone is really encouraged much for people in society anymore. You know what I mean? Like the message that we hear today is one of safety for sure, right?
100%.
And nothing wrong with being safe, but life doesn't happen in safety. Life happens when you're out here trying something, exploring, or taking a risk.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that younger, growing up. I was also very much, I would say, coddled and sheltered. Okay. So I was a combination of two growing up as well. So when I went out to the real world, and without developing these skills of being sure of myself, being able to go out and like really push and be aggressive or make my stamp in the world, I feel like my 20s, I just got trampled all over because I didn't have any of these inherent skills and I didn't stand up for myself. And I think there was a push to make men less aggressive, less masculine. I understand because I'm also one of those people that like, when I think of the fact that I'm trying to be involved with like martial arts, the fight game, and all this stuff now, this is what I considered it before. If I think about like the mid 2000s, I think about Affliction. We were at the Affliction gym. I can't tell you how much as like a 15-year-old, if I saw someone with an Affliction t-shirt, I was like, what a fucking douchebag.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was the when you talked about toxic masculinity, it was typically a guy in that kind of realm. I don't think he represents most men. I think the problem is that we have loud segments of undesirable types. This exists in both male and female dichotomy, and this exists in a modern, updated way too. I'm just, this is the example that I kind of go back to, and I think that we tend to associate everyone with the loud portion that upsets us, and there are parts that like toxic masculinity and also a sense of toxic femininity is too. I don't want to, I can't be the one to judge that, but I do think that exists as well. On a certain level.
Can you give me like an example of what you feel like that is?
I think that does exist in our online space now, because there's like the person who's really defensive, the person who wants to tear people down, takes offense to everything, meets no common ground. Everything is a defensive stance. I think there is a feminine type out there right now that does have this kind of personality. Once again, though, it's not the majority. But the problem is that the loud minorities they catch our attention. Yeah. That's the news highlights. You know what I mean? It really is at the end of the day.
100%.
And we forget that about each other.
I was actually having this conversation yesterday, and I was talking about how most people are not on either side of the extremes.
Right.
Most people are just regular people that just want to live their lives. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But it's so funny how the extremes are highlighted.
Absolutely.
You know, the most toxic asshole douchebag man versus the most toxic feminist woman who hates men.
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's like, okay, what side are you on?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, why the fuck do I gotta be on either side? You know?
This there's a quote by Noam Chomsky who's in terms of like politics, someone I follow very deeply in terms of his writing. But he wrote something about democracy in the U.S. that it's always kind of held true to me that I think is spot on. Is the way to control a population is to limit the spectrum of debate, but allow for lively debate within that spectrum. So, you know, there's a whole world of ideology and viewpoints and politics that we can all have. But in our country, we tend to, are you a red or are you a blue? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're A or you're B. Like, it's very cut and dry, black and white, good and evil.
Do you feel like it's the lack of education in regards to abundance? It's kind of like everything that's fed to us is scarcity, you know? So it's kind of like,
yeah, no, that's,
you know, like,
that's something
like
I can see.
this is the only way, and like this is the only way you could fit in or get by is if you choose a side, or
right.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
like, I'm not sure specifically, but
no, there is a lot of that kind of I think amongst the especially today.
Yeah,
today is the worst point, I think. Because I've been very vocally political since the Bush administration.
Okay.
I was one like those people that participated in like the Iraq War, kind of rallies around like high school and stuff. But we weren't doing anything, but you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you know I was who was I talking to? I'm not specifically sure, but how a lot of people in the fight game or actually in general the athletic world tend to lean more conservative.
They are
because they're very big on like, I earned, like, you know, like I did my job.
Yeah.
And since I did my job, I won and I reaped the benefits of winning.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, I take complete ownership of what I did and I won. I've won fair and square. I followed the rules of the game.
Right.
And that kind of leans to, you know, like, okay, if you talk about like the society we live in, you know, capitalism, whatever it is,
right.
Talks about like, all right, here are the rules. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And the people who have won, you know,
yeah.
You can make the argument that like that's kind of an athletic value.
There does seem to be a crossover, yes.
Sure. So I was thinking like it's funny how me and you have talked about this, and you don't see a lot of people who are very liberal in these aspects, especially the fight game.
Oh my god.
Especially the fight game.
It's been hard, yeah.
Talk about the most complete ownership sport that you.
Yeah.
It's the only sport where you're completely alone,
right?
And you're the only one. And there's no, you know, you have the rules, and you do whatever you got to do to win. You know, and so it's interesting to me, like that you, you know, and because me and you talk about it, you would say you're, you have pretty liberal values in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I was very left leaning. I was very extremely left up until recently. I would say.
It's so funny. So many people who are left are saying like I'm out.
Yeah,
like
it was like we are in late stage capitalism, which, mind you, which I think is the most interesting thing is that people who typically subscribe to the socialist mindset of late stage capitalism, which they're not wrong, but they don't understand why they're right, which is what frustrates me, because a lot of people who are left leaning socialists, they don't understand finance in the world of economics for the most part, because they see it as like, why? This is like...
What's money?
Yeah, like, what is this? Like, this is the system that oppresses us. Why would I learn it? And from a philosophical standpoint, I can understand that. But it's like, yo, but we live in this, though. You know what I mean? But we live in this, though.
Okay, but, like, so if I would be like, well, we should still question the system that we're living in. And, like,
yeah.
You know, it's like it's oppressive. Like, just because we're in it doesn't necessarily mean we should be accepting it.
Exactly.
You know?
100%. I'm very much on that side of that.
And I don't want to get too much into it in regards to economics. I'm not too aware of it, and I did do that on my last podcast. But in regards to capitalism, right?
Yeah.
In regards to capitalism, is that something that you feel like? Are you anti-capitalism?
No, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily anti-capitalist. I was more for. I definitely.
Or were you? I guess.
I was more vocally socialist, but as you start learning about the world of finance and like the Federal Reserve, the central banks, the way that the money system works, and that it's a debt-based system, you start learning that like it's not even the ideology of capitalism, because this isn't even capitalism we're living in now. It's an oligarchy of major corporations and banks that basically control everything on a large scale. All the resources are controlled by them. They're the first ones to access the money. Debts are basically fucking write-offs. Your wealth is built in debt for the people who actually know how to play the game. This is why this is why Donald Trump will not pay taxes and do it legally. And this is the thing that, like I said, people on the left who are socialists, which I still consider at my core, I still kind of am. They just don't understand what this game is. And I'm like, look, Dan, you can't be like, I fucking hate basketball, I'm not going to learn the rules of it. And it's like, if you hate basketball, maybe you should learn the rules of it so you understand exactly what it is you hate about it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what started me on this journey of this. For me, it started after the '08 recession began, because I wanted to understand, like, what's a derivative? Like, what is the housing crisis? Why this happened? And that started me down this rabbit hole. Really, now I follow the markets daily. I understand the ebb and flow of it. In a general sense, I'm not trying to act like
Yeah, all I did was watch The Big Short.
Yeah, and mind you, The Big Short does an amazing job of explaining what I had to spend years reading articles, learning about terminology.
All you gotta do is watch that fucking movie.
And that movie was like, I watched it, I was like, wow, that was perfect.
It's
like,
actually
absolutely perfect.
It's one of my favorite movies.
It's 100%. Everyone should watch that movie. It's
Everyone.
so relevant to what happened to all, and why we're fucked right now. If everyone wants to understand why 2020 was like a pivotal point where everything changed and we're going to watch a downward spiral in our quality of life, watch The Big Short. And when you understand the concept of kicking the can down the road, here's what happened when the can meets the wall. And here we are today.
I want to get into that. Okay, so we've hit the wall.
Yes.
We're fucked.
We're fucked.
How?
So a substantial amount of our currency has been created in the last year. It's not circulating amongst us. Like, I know people think about
Didn't they say like 43% of every U.S. dollar was printed this year?
I do not recall the exact percentage, but I know it is significant, basically. Because there's M1 and M2 money supply. M1 money supply is basically money that moves between banks and major financial institutions. And then M2 money supply is the money that we trade hands. M2 money supply has not changed that significantly. People get really upset about the stimulus money, extra unemployment, compared to what we are handing the banks. Drop in a bucket. It's not even meaningful.
What do you mean compared to the money we're handing the banks?
So with the bailout money that's being given, the banks are basically issued able bonds. They issue bonds. The Federal Reserve buys them. They get cash flow. They get the cash into the banks, so the reserves are constantly filled. Which means that we're watching all this money circulate to like things like the stock market, the bond market, rebuying into assets. Essentially, the money goes directly from the central bank, the Federal Reserve, into the banks, which the banks are supposed to lend out to the people. That's kind of the core of our money system. Right now, the banks are being shot money in mass to be kept afloat. Since 2008, when the financial crisis happened, we did the bailout. The bailout has literally never stopped. Since 2008, the amount that we bailed out in 2008, the overall arching amount is now, I don't remember if it's weekly or monthly, but it becomes basically like what we're doing monthly now. So this is, when they talk about things like inflation in the markets, it's very gradual until it's sudden, which is, we're approaching points that seem sudden. The thing is that the money's not necessarily circulating in paper money, which is why we're not. Everyone talks about Weimar Germany, wheelbarrows of money coming in to buy bread. We're not seeing that situation right now because it's mostly the financial institutions moving money, basically to keep everything afloat. That's why they can't allow a drop in the stock market. They can't allow a drop in any sort of equities right now. In the housing market, I think we're living through the end of the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. So I think we're watching a transition point for that. It could be over the course of 10 years, but I think we are entering an era where, one, we're going to have nationalized crypto in every country. I think we're going to move to a nationalized crypto soon. If you want to talk about what solves the problem of hyperinflation, if it's digital, kind of does, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just digits now. There's arguments to be made here and there too, but I mean, just generally speaking, you know, it solves that problem. But I mean, people are still getting priced out. Like, if you look at people right now in California, most people can't afford to live.
Yeah.
It's gotten so insane with rate of inflation now. And I think it's these major cities that are having it first. Of course, you know, other countries around the world are experiencing their own crisis as well. And if you want to look at what happens when too much money is created, I mean, I think it's Venezuela has had like 3 times now they've had full currency collapses, you know, and that's not pretty. Like,
what happens? What happens if that happens here?
Typically, it goes to revolt in the street. Typically, it goes into mass uprisings and institutions falling apart. I think that's why nowadays in our culture here in the United States, they're handing out money to try to appease people. It's appeasement money, just to keep them from rioting in the streets. And I mean, the movements that we're seeing right now, both in terms of, like, say, you know, Black Lives Matter marching through streets for racial justice, or oh God, what is that? The Trump movement, kind of the ones that started
QAnon or whatever.
Yeah, Q and all that. Yeah, QAnon. Yeah, they all stem from the same thing. Everyone's kind of getting fucked, and no one really knows who exactly to point the finger at, but they're angry, and they have energy to throw out there. And I mean, that kind of energy tends to be like a burn it the fuck down. There was a statistic I once read. Once again, if I knew I would have brought stats. But it was something around, like, when it costs like 40% of your income to start feeding yourself in terms of inflation, that's typically when you see revolt in the streets. I think the Arab Spring in 2011 was something of that nature. I remember it was essentially a food revolt that turned into a full uprising.
I don't know their specific percentage, but I know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's a trigger point, because it's like, once you can't get through your day, like, if you can't eat, long-term thinking goes out the window.
Yeah, you're like, I need, like, I need this fucking food.
I need food, and I'm going to take this fucking food because I'm hungry.
And we're in America where people are like, let me get mine. It'll be bad here.
It will be really bad here.
People don't give a fuck about each other here.
This is what worries me so much, especially about where we are right now here in LA. This is like, I think going to be some ground zero shit in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly. I mean, look at it. Look at when you drive through here. You know what I mean? Look at the amount of tent cities. I'm not blaming these people. I get it. They just got beat by a system that wasn't designed for them, you know? And now they're on the streets in tents. And on a certain level, there's a personal responsibility for them to get their life together.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, but there's a back and forth to it, too, because LA is ridiculous.
Explain that to me. They're in a system that wasn't designed for them. What does that mean?
I think we're moving back into a new feudalism in terms of, like, the middle class is being eroded, especially since, you know, the pandemic started and the changeover that we have, the shutdown of all these businesses. People don't realize how much small business actually employ people. That was really like the backbone of our economy. And
what is it, 40% or just?
Yeah, it was something massive. Not everyone works for, you know, Home Depot and Walmart. You know, it's a lot of people work for just small mom and pops, and that's also where a lot of wealth is generated with small independent businesses. You know, trying
people
to
here don't realize that because we see the Walmarts and Home Depots, right? But people like in, you know, like in these small places or that we don't really see, like that's like their, like you're right, that's their backbone. You know? Small
town America, they understand it still. We grew up here in probably one of the biggest bubbles in the entire world, in you know, the Southern California bubble, and we're just so used to everything being a major corporation here, but that's not actually what the rest of the world. And you know, if you live here in like LA area, you kind of get caught in an LA thinking kind of like bubble.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that's a real thing here for sure.
Definitely.
For sure.
Kevin, don't kill me. I gotta pee. Keep talking if you'd like.
Oh, fucking hell, mate. Right.
So in these cities like, cheers.
Cheers, bro.
So in these cities like LA, I agree with you in regards to, I feel like we're one of those cities that's like ground zero in a lot of like revolts and movements and stuff like that. And,
right.
And it kind of makes me think like people are just getting fed up. Like people, Absolutely. You know, I feel like, you know, the movie Fight Club.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, I feel like a lot of people are just like, it was like, what's the quote? It's something, I don't want to quote it completely, but it's kind of like, oh, like, we're sold this notion of like being movie stars and rock stars and being rich, you know, and we're like
middle children of society.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
It's like we have no purpose.
Yes.
There's nothing to really live for.
No, absolutely. Yeah. We're all disillusioned.
And people are fucking mad.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
I think that's why everyone's trying to be an influencer on Instagram now. You know what I mean? It's like this is the illusion that we've been sold of what reality is or what we want or what would even make us happy.
Yeah.
Most of those people aren't even fucking happy. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, 100%. No, they're not.
Oh. It's I don't know, man. It's a few decades of just I feel like it's just a false dream being sold to people, and people not realizing that it's just been slowly inched away from everything for years now. You know,
do you blame, like, I don't want to say it again, but do you blame capitalism for it? Like, do you think that that's something that Liam, on my last podcast, his name's Liam, like the last guy I had.
Right.
He said everything under the system is to just make profit. Everything. We don't give a fuck about anything else except money.
Right.
Like, if we can't get some kind of profit out of you, you know, we can't get some kind of exploitation of your time, labor, energy, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're worthless. You're literally worthless at that point.
Right. And I understand that sentiment. There's been a lot of things that we've done. I feel like we've changed the rules of what's allowed, which is what's made capitalism so bad. Because we have something that's called cronyism at this point, which is what the bailout is. You know what I mean? It's like these are insolvent beings being kept afloat by like insider money being handed to them and whatnot. Or you think about connections and whatnot. Major corporations who are allowed to be zombies to continue and whatnot. This isn't even about exploitation of profit. It literally is a system of people who are the big money, able to control and maintain their wealth through all of this. So there's a major problem when we have corporations who are given just extra treatment in terms of like what they're given as resources, people who are given access to things that isn't fair, and none of this is actually capitalism though. In terms of like philosophically what capitalism is, this is all anti-capitalism. Capitalism is supposed to be the person who seeks the most, creates the most, does the most with it. You know, this isn't that model. This is the model of people in control or people with influence and power bending the rules or giving themselves unfair advantages within the game. And the problem is that it's been shielded as capitalism for so long now. I mean, realistically, everything post-World War II, we can honestly get to that point, but you could really make the connection from like Ronald Reagan on in the 1980s when labor basically got left behind, and you start seeing people with equities or assets just start exploding and with value and worth. You know what I mean? It became a system that just wasn't for the people anymore. And this is really what I mean is that the general population has been thrown overboard for at least 4 decades now. Minimum 4 decades. And this is every administration. This is every government that you can think of. Like the general people have been thrown overboard and not been given an opportunity to participate in this anymore.
What do you feel like needs to happen for it to somewhat get back to that point?
Oh boy, that's
burn it all down.
You know, if you talked to me 5 years ago, that actually was my answer, and part of me just kind of like almost feels ashamed of that. But it really, because the problem is, you know what I tell you now? There is no answer. It is kind of fucked beyond like repair without massive pain. Which the massive pain, if it had come in 2008, if it had come then, it would have been on those who are more wealthy. Those who are more wealthy were bailed out. So now it comes back to we the people. And it really comes back. This is why you have people who live in LA who would be considered very liberal, and people who live in rural parts of the states who be very conservative. If you look at the essence of what the real problem is, same thing. But they've been convinced on something else for each one. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't look here, you know what I mean, look here kind of a thing. It's really the entire financial system that we have. It's all the major banks. It's the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal, by the way. Is not owned by the United States. Is a private entity that distributes our money. Is not actually federal. The Federal Reserve is not actually owned by the United States government. Just like the U.S. Post Office is not owned by the government. It is a private business. The government, the institution that issues our currency is not actually owned by the U.S. government.
What the fuck?
This is where I keep saying, like, this is not actually capitalism. People don't even understand what they're angry at because we're not taught any of this. We're not taught any of this.
Pull that up, Jamie. What the fuck? The Federal Reserve isn't owned by the U.S. government?
It's not federal.
It's not ran by the U.S. government? There's no...
Not.
What?
It is not. It is a private institution that the U.S. Treasury does business with. And the current head of the U.S. Treasury is Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen was the head of the Federal Reserve prior to her role in the U.S. Treasury. Yeah.
Bro.
Yes. Which the Fed has a website that, mind you, which is the most amazing thing is that if you really want to see the ballooning in our money supply, the Fed themselves have it on. It's on charts on their website. All of it's public knowledge. They can't hide it. The thing is that who looks at this though? Who cares? When it comes to economics, people basically fight about. This is why I hate the minimum wage argument. This is why I hate when people start trying to debate the minimum wage at me, because of both sides of it. It's just like what you're trying to propose to me is a Band-Aid solution for a gaping fucking wound in our leg. You know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is falling apart, but you have this, you want to debate on which Band-Aid we should use. Like, this is why people think that capitalism is broken.
So you think this is a wound we can't heal?
I do not. I think at this point, the healing point would have happened in 2008. Because we did not have that happen then, this is now global too, by the way. We're going to experience something in the next 5 to 10 years that's going to be substantial in our lifetime. There's a concept known as the fourth turning, which talks about basically generational cycles. Every 4 generations, you tend to see like the shift in power and whatnot. Sure. We are currently in what is considered the fourth turning. I don't want to sit here and butcher the concept. I think it's better if people just Google the fourth turning and just start reading up on it. Okay. But there's an idea that we're going through a cyclical motion where things are about to reset. And global reserve currencies have never lasted longer. I think it was like 80 or 90 years, which we are pretty much up. That mark was around 2008. So the bailout, the stimulus, this is in essence how you create. You know, when they talk about Zimbabwe dollars, you know, the $1 trillion Zimbabwe bill, because of hyperinflation, because they overextended their currency. We are actually going to see that. The thing is that it's digitized. It's kept into a specific part of financial markets. But what we see now for people is a lack of growth in terms of like keeping up with cost of living. Most people are falling below the rate of inflation. They're not keeping up. They're not able to actually get ahead and succeed. And then you see less opportunities as well. So what you get is just kind of this wasteland for the average person.
Okay. So what does one do? Like, what is, like, being I would consider myself an optimist. Kevin says I'm an optimist. What does one do at this point to just get by? What are some smart moves you feel like the average person should be doing right now to stay somewhat safe here?
Somewhat safe is, first thing is if you can unload any of your consumer debt, I would definitely do that. You know, your credit cards, your auto loan. If you can somehow get out of those, that would be step one, because things that accrue interest in double digits on you on a monthly basis tend to bury you. 2 would actually be having a reserve set aside to make sure you can, you know, in case something happens, you don't have to rely on a credit card. And then, you know, from there, it's, you know, trying to invest and build, which is a whole different thing. But I don't think that the average person is going to keep up at this point. I don't think with our current situation, I think that's, especially with the eviction moratorium that just got lifted a couple days ago, right? So we're going to see something happen now that's scary, to be honest.
Like homelessness is about to go up, huh? Crazy.
Insanely high. Because now all of a sudden landlords who were not forced to keep people in their home are no longer being held those mandates in certain states. I think there's something federally about that too. I would rather have that looked up first and spout off shit. But we're watching what's going to be the falling part. This is typically when transfers of wealth happen in moments like this. Basically, the wealthy, like in 1929, when the wealthy basically pull the rug, and we're able to get everything back pennies on the dollar because of the drop in value. We're kind of watching that happen right now in front of us as well. The average person is going to fall apart. Those who do have means will be able to control. And this isn't at its core capitalism. It is people who exploit a system built around capitalism, which I guess if you want to blame the essence of that, I can understand. But people have really been thrown overboard, and I think we're watching that happen in real time in front of us right now. This is why everyone's trading money. Trading equities on the markets right now. This is why people are making fortunes off Dogecoin. This is mania. We're in full-blown mania. Mania is like, and we're also getting stimulus money, which is helicopter money, which is what is called, and it's a reference. Mm-hmm. We're watching things happen in front of us where when the thing blows up and falls apart, we're going to think back to these moments and realize why it got there. And I think that right now, most people haven't caught what's happening because they're so caught up on life has a lot of things that catch your attention nowadays, right?
Do you feel like that since we have all these luxuries, you say, like Instagram and YouTube and the internet and porn and fucking alcohol and clubs and all that stuff, like, do you feel like entertainment like, right? Do you feel like since these things are there, like, we won't really feel it as much? Because, like, are these things going to get taken away? And I'm not saying, like, that's what, like, I want. I'm saying in general, do you feel like we as American citizens are so attached to this concept of entertainment and short-term gratification and stimulants that, like, we won't even realize that, like, this happened?
On a certain level, yes. I think to an extent we're watching it happen right now.
Because, like you said, like, you know, from what you're saying, it's like, okay, obviously, like, I'm not disagreeing with you that whatever's happening, but people aren't talking about this because there's so much shit that
happening right now. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying, like, that we're clouded with.
Right, because if people understood what was actually going on and what our system was based on and how they're getting screwed, there'd be uprisings in the street. This is why when I was a very, very hardline socialist still, in 2011 when Occupy Wall Street was happening, I was like, fuck yeah, dude, like, fuck them. Like, for real, like, 100%, fuck all these hedge funds, fuck Goldman Sachs, fuck JP Morgan. Like, I was 100% about that shit. And then you notice how I feel like every other movement has somehow continued since then, but somehow Occupy got broke up and taken down real fast.
Yeah.
Like, there was a real threat there because the people were having an uprising. Once again, not everyone there understood why, but in 2011 we were still in a recession, so most people were still hurting from the 2008 crisis, and then the quantitative easing, which is what they called it, money printing essentially, that was being given to float the system, was in billions of dollars. Mind you, today is in trillions. So it's progressively like it's like you just keep watching these charts that, like, just keep going up, you know.
And what happens when it's just that's obviously not sustainable?
Bell curves come down at some point, and they crash hard, and they're painful. And I think we could live through something in our lifetime that would be very painful to live in, especially where
what does that look like?
I think the breakdown of general society as we know it. I think we start seeing things that we took for granted break. I mean, we saw supply chains start breaking down in the last year. We saw major crashes in the equity markets in March of 2020. Mind you, that's when quantitative easing from the Federal Reserve Bank started kicking the fuck up after that. They weren't going to let that shit sink after that shit. So I think we watch a slow deterioration until it's very sudden. But when it's very sudden, I don't know what happens when the sudden deterioration happens. But I assure you that something changes fundamentally forever. Like, we look back and that was a moment where things never go back the same. In some sense, we've already experienced that with the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that is just the beginning effects. I really do. People who think we're going to go back to life as normal, I don't think are aware of just what we're experiencing right now. And there's a larger scale geopolitical problem with this too, because we're having this inflation in the U.S. dollar, right? Massive amounts of money printing. Every country in the world is obligated to buy oil in U.S. dollars based on the Bretton Woods Act that was passed in after World War II. That oil is now denominated in U.S. dollars, so everyone had to buy in U.S. dollars. So there's a global demand for U.S. dollars as well. So we're going to see a market.
Does that increase the value of the dollar?
In a sense, that's what's floating the dollar right now.
Got it.
Which is why we have issue with China. China doesn't want to take the U.S. dollar anymore. You can't even blame, like geopolitically, you can't even blame them, right? Why is it a good deal? They're just obligated to this deal. Yeah. Russia as well does not want to accept oil, their oil in U.S. dollar as well. I think geopolitical tensions can happen based on this because the dollar is, as the world reserve currency, everyone's kind of subsided to the U.S. government. If people start breaking that and just saying, forget it, I'm going to accept oil or buy oil however I feel, then that's when the U.S. tends to go to war. What people don't realize what happened in Libya in 2011 is that Gaddafi started accepting oil in a gold-backed currency in Africa. And we were like, oh, no. We can't be having that now.
No. Yeah, that was fucked up.
And once again, as a hardline socialist too, this is where you saw like Barack and Hillary. And it was like, see, this isn't what I want. These people are going out here and bombing other countries based on, the fact that they want oil so priced in U.S. dollars to control the world.
Bullshit imperialism.
This is not like. Once again, I'm definitely no fan of any Republican, but I'm like, don't tell me that the Democratic Party is better. This is all the party of power and money. At the end of the day, every one of them, every last one of them. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. You're right, brother.
Exactly.
ISIS took over Libya because we deposed Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a force and dictator, and dictators aren't
right.
But when the U.S. intervenes, things aren't better.
If you want to trace it all the way back in the 1980s during the the Contra conflict or whatever, that's when we gave Osama bin Laden weapons of mass destruction. We gave it to him in the 80s when he was an insurgent for the U.S. fighting Russian military. It's like it all tracks back. The CIA has been playing war games for a long time. And then we see the long game of them, and they all kind of come back, and people have short-term memories.
But 9/11.
Never forget.
Never forget.
Never forget. I mean, oh, God. That's where I definitely got started politically, because I was in high school then, I think it was in middle school when it happened. And in high school, I became a total truther. I was like, oh, man, you know what I mean? Like, oh, man, Bush knocked down the towers for sure.
Oh, shit.
I was one of those guys for sure. In essence.
Me and Kevin were too young to, like, have any opinions at that point.
Yeah, you guys, because I was in middle, so I was actually aware of what happened that day, and I was like, oh, shit.
Do you remember that day, Kevin?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You don't remember it? I remember everything when I was 2. Nah, I'm kidding.
Cadillac does that, though.
Aha, Cadillac, baby. Okay, so what was 9/11?
I think there was in essence with 9/11, Building 7 I know contained records of transactions. Oh God, what was it? It was records of transactions in the markets because there was a major shorting that happened in the market when the planes hit the tower. I remember that. Everything traced back to money. On September 10th, I remember Donald Rumsfeld announced that the Pentagon had lost $10 trillion or something like that. There was all this shit that happened that was just like, are you kidding? Oh God, I'm doing such a bad job butchering all that, but it's fine. I didn't come on here to be a 9/11 truther. It's been 20 years. Who cares at this point? It's already been done. Mm-hmm. It's done. It's over. It's set in stone. Whatever. But it was just very clearly it was a power. Like this is what I said about COVID too when it first came along. It's not about
next.
Yeah, it's not about COVID itself. It's about the things it brings along with it. Like think about going through an airport now post 9/11. It's obviously we were both too young to really understand going through an airport. Because I was like 10.
Pre-9,
yeah. But it was not what it is today, where you get scanned, your whole body, your whole naked picture of you gets fucking saved onto a fucking government TSA database. You know what I mean? Like, But now that's accepted as just normal. Like, we have to do this. You know what I mean?
So do you feel like they're doing something like that in terms of like the vaccine and stuff?
Vaccine, yes. I think there is a push. I don't know if the vaccine itself is self-nefarious, like some people are worried about. But I think it's setting a precedent of a vaccine ID, or testing for such things. I think there is a push to. There's a general push for depopulation. If you were to ask me, what those.
I heard that depopulation isn't actually as big of an issue as we think. I heard that we are actually like at the rate at first world countries, people are not procreating as.
No, absolutely not.
Just look at right now. Like, look at us. No one's having kids at our age. Like, no one is like people are like back in the day. People our age were popping out like 8, 9, 10 kids.
Oh yeah, we're below replacement rate at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, like Japan.
Yeah.
I forgot what year it was. 2016. Japan was selling more adult diapers than baby diapers.
Yeah. It was very much a thing. I remember when I was in Japan, I went a couple times, and I remember seeing this. Like, I didn't remember seeing a lot of teenagers, and there would be some young couples with kids, but it was not as frequent as you would think. It's mostly just adults you saw walking around.
But then you have places like India right now where people just fucking dropping left and right.
And there's a whole thing right now with how India's having a huge COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
And I made a huge point to look at India as an infrastructure. It's very much not on par with the first world, obviously.
Not at all.
They also have a massive population boom because lots of kids are very much encouraged within the culture. And then they're all very tightly packed within these metropolitan areas.
Yes.
It's like...
There's 1.3 billion people in that area.
If you look at all the factors of what makes COVID deadly, India actually checks all the boxes right off.
All of them.
And I don't take it lightly for what it is, but it's like, well, look at the factors. That's something I said about all this at the beginning. It's look at the factors of like, why are the numbers so high, and what is it that's a commonality? And I feel like no one's really done that since all this. It's just, oh no, there's a virus. We all just need to stay home. And I'm like, we need to think about this. Think about this.
People don't really think. People
don't really think.
We're not big thinkers, at least here in America. We're kind of like, just tell us what to do. Tell us what to believe. Tell us what to fucking say.
How'd you get straight A's in school? You regurgitated back information.
Yeah.
We weren't taught to be critical thinkers. It's not something encouraged.
Do you feel like we're not taught to be that because it's almost like the more educated and informed we are, the less kind of like an enemy like to what the system wants us to be. You know what I'm saying?
We're pacified. We're less of a threat. Absolutely. We're, George Carlin used to have a bit where he talked about they want you just smart enough to run the machinery and fill out the paperwork, and just dumb enough to keep accepting the bullshit they keep feeding you every year after year. It's basically it. Like, we just need you to know how to do what we want you to do and stay there. Stay there. That's how most people live their lives.
All right. So knowing all the information that you do, what is you see this happening and you have these beliefs, and, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. What are you doing? What is your plan? Do you have a plan? Do you have goals? Do you have something? What are your do's and don'ts? Give me your John Conway, survive America for dummies. Like,
I personally wouldn't really be too keen on like a 401k or an IRA account right now. I don't think that's a long term. I think we're due for a massive crash. So personally, I like cryptocurrency. I like precious metals. If you have enough capital to get real estate, that's definitely better, I think, as an overall strategy in terms of what we're heading into. In my personal life, man, I just don't know if it's really like, you got to find something that makes you happy, because we're about to go through something I think is so demoralizing. And most people seem to be already kind of on board with that. Most people are kind of already broken after this past year. And I would just say, find something that makes you feel alive. Find something that makes you feel happy every day. This is why I love martial arts. It's been the first thing in my life to be able to tune out all this shit. Like, God, when I was still a few years back before I started all this, and I was still living my past life, I would think back to just how much I'd obsessed over all this, the large scale picture of it, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Even being aware, it's like you want to be aware to make good decisions, but it's not healthy to obsess over these things. So
because there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do on the grand scheme of it. You can save yourself, and then in turn, if you do a good enough job, you can probably save some of those you love. But that's really the extent that you have. So I would say find a way to make you happy. Find something to live for on your own. Don't even be concerned about this paradigm. We're going through a shift. There's a change that's going to happen in our lives. There's a change that's going to happen in the way we live in society over the course of the next decade.
Is there a possibility that it doesn't, and we just keep doing what we're doing?
I think this game can ride out for longer than we think. This is why I say 10 years, because
you don't think there's any possibility it goes longer than 10 years?
No,
10 more years.
I absolutely do not. I think there will be a fundamental shift with the stages that are already in place right now. I think there's already been a fundamental shift.
What do you feel like we will never go back to again? What aspects of life do you feel like are just gone?
I think the idea of the American dream, the middle class, having a family, trying to succeed in the way that we were kind of taught to, I think that dream is dead for most of us. And I think this ties back to our original point about men not trying anymore. I think in an internal sense, we all know this. And this is why a lot of us have given up. And I did too. I gave up too. And I get it. But it's just not the way to live. At the end of the day, you're going to drown yourself in something. You're gonna find some escapism. I always like the comparison to Rome. They talk about in
the fall of Rome.
In the fall of Rome, three of the popular ideologies of the time were hedonism, skepticism, and stoicism. And hedonism, I feel like we can see a little bit of that just on Instagram nowadays. Skepticism seems to be that everyone questions everything that happens now. Everything's a debate. We don't have any sense of reality anymore. Everything, Dave Chappelle put it as, we live in the age of spin. I think we do. And then stoicism is just accepting life for what it is and going about it in the most honest and true way to yourself, while also making sure that you do what you can. And the fight world has guided me to that path. I didn't have that before. I didn't think that way before. I was very much burn down the system. And in the ashes, we will let it rain, and we will find a new way from there. And now I realize that's foolish, because that tends to lead in tyrants.
Yeah.
And then when you have that, well, I hope you didn't expect a good life in your lifetime. So
we'll end there.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers, bro.
John Conway, thank you so much for being on. That was one of my favorite episodes. Actually, that might have been my favorite episode. Appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate you.
No problem.
I am terrified to hear what I just said on camera back to me. But you know what? I meant every word of it. Hold me to it. Hold me to it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.